What happens when the people who are supposed to have your back become your biggest problem? When the line between loyalty and betrayal gets completely erased by greed? Family is meant to be a safe harbor, right? A place of unconditional love. But for some people, it's a battlefield. The stories you're about to hear come from the wilds of Reddit. They're about that one final straw, that moment a person decides they're done being the victim in their own family's drama. Now, are these stories 100% verifiably true? They're from the internet, so who knows? But they are stories of betrayal so deep, they could only be answered with a reckoning. And they prove that sometimes, the best justice is the kind you serve yourself. Hook. We're kicking things off with a story that sounds like it was ripped from a movie script. Imagine you're in a hospital bed, floating in that space between life and death. The only thing you hear are the hushed voices of your family. But they aren't praying for you. They're plotting. They're carving up your life, your home, and your future, all because they think you're too far gone to ever stop them. In our first story, a man who survives a horrific accident wakes up just in time to hear a venomous plot to steal his inheritance. What he does next is a masterclass in cold, calculated revenge that dismantles their world, piece by piece. Stick around for that, and for 2 more stories of epic family payback you won't want to miss. Section 1, The Inheritance Plot. Our first story comes from a Redditor we'll call Mark. By any measure, Mark was a success. He'd spent his 20s and 30s building a logistics company from the ground up. It wasn't fancy, but it was his, a multi-million-dollar business born from his own blood, sweat, and missed holidays. He had a nice, modest home, some investments, and a will that clearly stated his life's work would be split between his parents and his 2 siblings, Sarah and Tom, if anything happened to him. He trusted them. That was mistake number 1. The family dynamic was strained. His parents came from old money and valued appearances above everything. While they were proud of their son's success, they were also quietly condescending about his hands-on, blue-collar work. It must be so tiring, dealing with all those trucks, his mother would say with a tight little smile. His siblings were worse. Sarah was a perpetual art student living off a trust fund, and Tom was a guy who radiated jealousy after failing at 3 different startups funded by their dad. They took Mark's generosity for granted, borrowing money they never planned to pay back and treating his home like their personal hotel. But they were family, so Mark put up with it. The day everything changed was sudden and brutal. A slick highway, a truck that lost control, a violent crash. Mark was pulled from the wreckage, barely alive. He spent the next 2 weeks in a medically induced coma. When he finally started surfacing from the fog, it wasn't to loving words. It was to whispering. He was in and out of it, his body was a wreck, but his mind was sharp enough to grab pieces of conversations from the hallway. At first, he thought he was hallucinating. But the words started forming a picture that made his blood run cold. It was his family. And they weren't talking about his recovery. They were talking about his money. The power of attorney is airtight, he heard his father say, his voice cold and clinical. Once the doctors declare him incapacitated, we can start liquidating. What about the house? That was Sarah. I already talked to a realtor. She thinks we can get 7 figures, easy. We'll have to clear out all his stuff, of course. It's so drab. Tom's voice was full of a greedy excitement that was terrifying. His investment portfolio is the real prize. I've seen the statements. We're talking millions. My new venture is going to be fully funded. Mark lay there, paralyzed in his own body, listening to his family circle his life like vultures. He heard them say this tragedy was, in a way, a blessing that would simplify things. There was no sadness in their voices. Just cold, hard greed. The betrayal hit him like a second car crash, and it lit a fire that no injury could put out. He knew right then, he wasn't going to die. He was going to get better. And he was going to get revenge. His recovery was slow, but his mind was working overtime. He knew his greatest weapon was their belief that he was helpless. So he played possum. When they visited, he kept his eyes closed, pretending he was still out of it, and listened. He learned his father had already met with lawyers. He learned Sarah had his house keys and was planning an estate sale. He learned Tom was already using Mark's company as a selling point to get funding for his next failed idea. Every word was another nail in their coffins. He began communicating with his most trusted nurse, Maria, first with hand squeezes, then with whispers when his family was gone. She became his secret ally, and helped him get in touch with his best friend and his lawyer, a real bulldog named David. From his hospital bed, the counterattack began. The first move, David, armed with a new, painstakingly signed power of attorney, froze everything. The bank accounts, the investments, the company funds. The phone call David made to Mark's father, which he put on speaker, was glorious. His father sputtered and threatened, but it was no use. The money was cut off. The second move, evidence. Maria had documented the conversations she'd overheard. David hired a private investigator who found out Tom was already using fake documents to get loans, and that Sarah had been caught on a neighbor's security camera taking expensive art from Mark's house. The climax wasn't one big fight. It was a slow, methodical, legal strangulation. Once he was out of the hospital, Mark refused to see or speak to any of them. All communication went through his lawyer. Tom was sued for fraud. The evidence was so damning that his investors vanished and the bank called in its loans. He was ruined. Sarah was sued for theft. Faced with security footage, she had to return everything. But Mark didn't stop there. He pressed charges. He wanted a criminal record to stain her perfect image. The final blow was for his parents. Mark cut off all the financial support he'd been giving them for years, the allowance that paid for their country club membership and fancy vacations. Then, he rewrote his will. He created a charitable foundation. When he died, every last cent would go to helping accident victims. His family's names were wiped from the document. They wouldn't get a thing. Their lives collapsed. Tom filed for bankruptcy. Sarah was convicted of misdemeanor theft, a humiliation she couldn't escape in her social circle. His parents had to sell their massive home. They sent letters, first angry, then begging, but Mark never answered. For Mark, the revenge wasn't about the money. It was about the silence. It was knowing they had shown him their true selves when they thought he couldn't see. He cut them out of his life like a cancer and found a peace that money could never buy. The ultimate revenge was just living his life, and living it well, completely without them. Section 2, The Chore War. Not every revenge story involves millions of dollars and lawsuits. Sometimes, the most delicious payback is quiet, petty, and served up in front of the whole family. This next story, posted by a Redditor we'll call Chloe, is about the slow-burn frustration of having a sibling who has perfected the art of doing nothing. Ever since they were kids, Chloe's younger brother, Liam, had a magical gift for dodging responsibility. He was the baby of the family, and he milked it. Chloe had to do her chores and get good grades, while Liam could get away with murder with a charming smile. I was gonna take out the trash, but I have so much homework. I'd mow the lawn, but my allergies. Their mom bought it. Every single time. Chloe would end up doing her chores and her anger just simmering. Things didn't change when they got older. Chloe went to college and got a job. Liam didn't. He lived at home, rent-free, working a part-time job that barely paid for his video games. He contributed nothing to the household. The moment that finally tipped Chloe from annoyed to vengeful genius happened at the annual family barbecue. It was a huge get-together. Chloe, as usual, spent the whole morning helping her mom prep food and set up tables. Liam spent the morning on the couch on his phone. But as soon as guests arrived, Liam transformed. He'd grab a tray of burgers from the grill right as his uncle walked up and say, "Careful, hot off the grill." He'd theatrically refill someone's drink, announcing, "I got this." He put on an Oscar-worthy performance of the helpful son, and the family loved it. "Oh, Liam is just such a wonderful helper." Chloe's aunt gushed to her mom. Her mom puffed up with pride. "He's a good boy. Always so thoughtful." Chloe stood there, hands covered in potato salad, watching her brother soak up praise for work he absolutely did not do. That was it. It wasn't about the chores anymore, it was about the sheer, shameless injustice of it all. Liam's reign of lazy deception was over. Chloe knew a direct fight would get her branded as jealous. No, her revenge had to be subtle and deeply embarrassing. For the next month, she became an archivist of her brother's laziness. She took time-stamped photos of the overflowing trash can before she took it out. She took videos of the dirty dishes in the sink before she washed them. She logged every ignored request. Tuesday, 7 p.m., asked Liam to walk the dog. His response, "In a minute." 9 p.m., walked the dog myself. She built a mountain of digital evidence. The stage was already set, her parents' upcoming anniversary party. A week before, she announced her gift. "I want to make a special slideshow for you guys. A trip down memory lane." Her parents were touched. Liam thought it was a great idea, since it meant he didn't have to do anything. The night of the party, Chloe gathered everyone in the living room. "Mom, Dad, this is for you." The first half of the slideshow was perfect. Cute baby pictures, family vacations, all set to heartwarming music. Everyone was feeling warm and fuzzy. And then the second half started. A new title card appeared on the screen, and a special tribute to the hardest working man in the family, Liam. Liam practically glowed. He thought it was real. "Oh, you sweet summer child." The first image was the overflowing trash can, time-stamped. The next slide, a smiling Chloe holding the full trash bags by the curb, time-stamped 5 minutes later. Next, a sink piled with dishes. Then, a sparkling clean sink. A video played of Liam on the couch, phone in hand, while the roar of a vacuum cleaner, pushed by Chloe, filled the air. Slide after slide, the evidence was undeniable. It was an exposé of laziness, complete with screenshots of texts from their mom asking him to do things, followed by his excuses. The grand finale was a slow-motion clip from the barbecue, set to the theme from Chariots of Fire, showing Liam lounging around until an uncle appeared, at which point he jumped up to play the hero. The room went dead silent. Then came the snickers. Their cousins were openly laughing. Their aunts and uncles were looking from the screen to Liam, whose face was turning beet red. His parents just looked stunned. When the slideshow ended with a picture of a freshly mowed lawn captioned, "You're welcome," the room erupted. Liam tried to stammer out an excuse, but it was useless. The proof was right there on a 60-inch screen. His aunt patted his arm and said, with a sickly sweet smile, "Well, it seems you've been very efficient with your energy, Liam." The chore war changed everything. Liam was so embarrassed, he actually started doing things around the house. For the first time, his parents couldn't ignore the difference in how they treated their kids. Chloe didn't yell or accuse, she just presented the facts. And she never had to take out his trash again. CTA. These stories show how creative people get when they're pushed too far. What do you think? Was Chloe's slideshow a work of genius or a step too far? Let us know in the comments. And if you're enjoying these stories, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. We've got one more story for you, and trust me, it's a showstopper. Section 3, The Secret Success. Our final story is a classic case of the underestimated hero. It's for anyone who's ever been dismissed by their own family as not smart enough or successful enough. This Redditor, we'll call him David, put up with years of it from his wealthy, status-obsessed family. Little did they know, he was quietly building an empire right under their noses. David's family was new money, and they never let you forget it. His dad struck it rich in real estate, and they had the mansion, the luxury cars, and the country club memberships to prove it. David's two older brothers followed right in their dad's footsteps. They were the heirs to the throne. David was different. He was quiet, introverted, and had zero interest in real estate. His passion was woodworking. After college, while his brothers were closing big deals, David started a small, custom furniture business in a rented garage. To his family, this was a huge embarrassment. A carpenter, his father would scoff at parties. I paid for a top-tier education, and he's a carpenter. His brothers were ruthless. They called him the Hobbit because he was always tinkering away in his little workshop. They'd make fun of his flannel shirts and calloused hands. "Don't worry, Davy," one of them said once, "if the furniture thing doesn't work out, you can always build us a new deck." David just smiled and took it. He knew arguing was pointless. He let them think he was a struggling artist, the quaint family failure. He never told them his waitlist for new pieces was 6 months long. He never mentioned the articles in design magazines calling him an artisanal genius. And he definitely never mentioned that his little hobby was already making more profit than one of his brother's entire divisions. He was building his success in silence while they were busy building a story about his failure. The big reveal was set in motion by his parents' 40th wedding anniversary. They were throwing a massive party at their mansion. 2 weeks before, his mom called him with that tone she always used, a mix of pity and shame. "David, darling," she said, "I know things are probably a bit tight. Your father and I would be happy to help you get a new suit for the party. We want you to look presentable." That was it. The assumption that he couldn't even afford a suit. David decided it was time. Not for a fight, but for a quiet, elegant, reality-shattering reveal. The plan was perfect. First, David called the caterer, Antoine, whose Michelin-starred restaurant was filled with David's custom furniture. "Antoine," David said, "I'd like to personally cover the cost of my parents' party. All of it. The bill comes to me." Antoine was happy to oblige. Next, the suit. He didn't just buy a new suit. He flew to Milan and had one custom-made by a tailor who dresses billionaires. Finally, the arrival. He hired a car service to pick him up in a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a car his dad only dreamed about. The night of the party, he arrived fashionably late. The Rolls pulled up the long driveway, and when the chauffeur opened the door, a hush fell over the guests. This was not the Hobbit they expected. He looked incredible, exuding a quiet confidence that was more powerful than all his brothers' bragging combined. He walked into the party and found his family. Their jaws were on the floor. "David," his mother gasped. "That suit, where? What's going on, Davy?" his brother sneered, trying to recover. "Win the lottery?" David just smiled. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad." All night, people flocked to him. The governor, who had recently commissioned a desk from David, greeted him like an old friend. A major art collector talked with him for 20 minutes. David's family just watched, confused, as the person they'd written off as a failure was treated like the most important man in the room. The final move came at the end of the night. His father walked over to the caterer, checkbook out, ready to make a grand show of paying the massive bill. Antoine smiled. "There's no need, sir. The bill has been taken care of." "What? By whom?" Antoine's eyes glanced over at David. "It was handled by the gentleman in the remarkable suit. He insisted on it being an anonymous gift for you." The next day, his father called. The arrogance was gone. "David, about last night." He stammered. "The caterer, did you?" "I wanted to do something nice for you and Mom," David said. "But, how?" "We thought." And for the first time, David told him. He told him everything. The wait list, the magazines, the international clients, the 7-figure revenue. He laid it all out, calmly and factually. The family power dynamic was flipped on its head. They couldn't mock him anymore. They had to respect him. David hadn't just built a business, he had built a life on his own terms. His revenge wasn't rubbing their noses in it. It was forcing them to see him for who he really was. The ultimate payback was proving that the quiet, unsuccessful son was the most successful one of them all. Conclusion. So, from a legal takedown to a public shaming by slideshow, to a stunning reveal of secret success, these Reddit stories show that family justice can take a lot of different forms. In every case, someone reached their breaking point and decided to take back the narrative. They're a good reminder that self-respect is everything, and sometimes the only way to fix a toxic dynamic is to change the rules of the game completely. CTA. Thanks for sticking with us. We want to hear from you. Which of these stories was your favorite? Have you ever had to plan a little revenge of your own? Drop your stories in the comments, we read them all. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Until then, remember to treat your family well. You never know who's planning a slideshow.